Hey, so
Hey,
should we continue?
what's it?
Same setup, just expand on it. Yeah, so just a quick recap for the both of us. Last time we mapped out the journey of using a canvas with a single stage as a new user, as a completely new user, and how that part works. You know, how you are creating stage, how you're updating stage, and how stages work within the canvas as an entity. There are some unanswered questions, but for the most part, it's okay. We did not go through connecting multiple stages, and maybe we can move on to that, and then we will see what's next. Does that sound okay?
Yeah, sounds great.
Yeah, so now that I have stage for my DigitalOcean instance, where I'm testing these Semaphore Community Edition versions. Well, not just Community Edition, Enterprise 2, and we'll talk about that in a second. I want to make sure that these versions, once I'm done with testing, get deployed to Google Cloud 2 and AWS. The reason for this is I want to test if the installation works as expected.
Do you want them deployment to both targets or to one and then later to another one?
I want the deployment to both targets at the same time.
Do you want to have manual approval or it seems that you do?
Well, in my use case, I want, yeah. So
The system has to know that you are happy with the
yes,
DigitalOcean installation.
exactly. So I need to say, okay, RC1 is ready and I'm ready to start testing it. So I need to approve that and get it on the DigitalOcean instance. And that's literally what's happening now. After I'm done testing, I need to specify that I'm done testing, right? So
I mean, I can
I guess
explain.
there needs to be a manual approval, but yeah.
I can explain with the system that we were speaking about how that can be done. So essentially, there is like a one block, and then one stage, and then two stages like in parallel that are following it. So there are lines going from DO to GKE,
Mm-hmm.
VM plus not GKE, but GCP VM and GKE.
Mm-hmm.
And essentially, once it successfully deploys to DO, a message will be sent to both of those. And it will be there in the queue for both stages. And you would need to have manual approval on both. Because once the deployment is green,
Mm-hmm.
I mean the DO deployment, it's green. It reached the final stage in its life cycle for that particular event that was processing your new version. At that point, it's emitting messages. Those two will be listening for those messages, and those messages will end up in the queue there. So as the system is, let's say, designed up to this point, you would need to manually approve for both of those stages. GCP VM plus GK, Google Kubernetes Engine.
Yes, that's clear. But is there an option for automated ones without approval?
Yes.
In that
but in that
case,
case, the those two would be triggered as soon as the deployment to DO is finished.
or I could chain them and say, hey, I need to approve Google Cloud one, but once I approve Google Cloud one and that deployment happens, it will immediately start the AWS one, for
Yeah.
example.
So it's as you are the person who is using this, it's up to you to model it that way also.
I want to. There is a next use case, but let's map this one. But I want to deploy same version to what's the name? I guess EKS.
What was that?
The Amazon one.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, it's Elastic Kubernetes Service. Yeah.
Yep. EKS to make sure installation is working. My requirements are to confirm once I'm done testing. Deploy to get.
What
I
would be that? It's unclear.
So there is that after the installation is done, I just need the log.
Yeah.
But that's something that I would.
Those are details. I mean, you can definitely get the log by just visiting the Semaphore pipeline that was triggered. Definitely a nicer experience would be that those URL or maybe username plus password or whatever is needed for that,
Mhm.
are communicated as outputs of that stage. And then you can grab them easily through the UI. I mean, without scrolling to the bottom of the log and taking them
Yes.
out. So I think that we should set that as a requirement. And yeah, maybe we can briefly try to tackle them, how that can be implemented. There is also an option of maybe not even talking about how that could be implemented, just put the
Listing it
data.
here as a expanded scope.
Yes.
Okay. So my steps are creating state. All right. So
I mean, for the sake of people that might be following, maybe we can just draw it as just a trivial 3 squares connected with a line, just so there is it's easier to follow. We can expand later on the details. So that means green is DO, right?
yes.
Maybe add a version there, because that's like the main data point that we are working with.
Let's add just a trigger, right? We've set this up to trigger.
That's GitHub release.
On GitHub release. What else did we say? It just has this Semaphore CE as an input, right? Right.
Yeah. I mean, make no.
I mean, the version we will add them. This is just a definition, right, of the stage, and as an output.
But I don't think it's useful for us to break it down in so many details. I mean,
All right. Then
it would have been too technical. I mean, with the
right.
details. I think that you can, in that Alex DO QA DigitalOcean, just add like a line below, which is like a version, and it's yeah, 7 CE, and let's say we want, yeah, whatever.
It's the current one that I'm testing.
Yeah.
Okay. There is no version here. Then we are defining this.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So creating a stage. I need to specify what I need to give it name and inputs. Required inputs. This also needs to be defined. And then the trigger will be different. Correct. So here, this step is same as so this stays, but trigger is what?
Well, it's deployment to DO becoming green. So stage name is, let's say, Alex DO QA, and yeah, we are listening to the events that that stage is emitting. And it is the event as a whole. It is the event as a whole that we are listening to. And then I guess that's it for the trigger.
There is an event that's like trigger, right?
I think that generally the trigger as entity is not going to exist as such. I think it will be event listener. So we are just listening on events.
Okay, but which events is this triggered by? I need to define that, no?
Well, there is one event coming out. Once the stage is complete, the event is being, emitted, and that event in it contains various data points in it. It contains the input that was passed to it from, GitHub. It contains that, yes, that it's passed, and approval is not happening. Approval for GK is happening on the GK stage. It has nothing to do with the DO stage.
Oh, okay. So every time a DO stage passes, it will generate.
It enters that queue.
It enters the queue.
That we spoke about.
Hmm.
And then on a level of queue, you can have those interactions with those things that ended in your mailbox.
Hmm.
You can throw the message away, or you can approve it.
So if for whatever reason I'm doing multiple deployments of the same version, let's not complicate it. I don't have that use case, so okay. So this is triggered by stage DQ DO events.
Yeah. Yeah. It will you will subscribe to those messages,
Mm.
and they will be landing in your queue. And then there is a moment of those conditions, which I'm not sure at this point, are they specified in the level of queue, or they probably are, or they are some kind of filter if something is going to pass from the queue into the stage and trigger the stage, but you want it passed as you started writing. So the condition is you want the previous stage to be in the past state. Because
In order for what?
Well, the DO stage can pass or fail.
Yes.
If it fails, it's again going to emit the message.
Yes.
You don't want that event. You don't want to react on that event in your GK stage.
Yes.
So that's where conditions come in. So you have name, inputs, trigger, and conditions are separate, entity that we haven't used so far.
Yeah.
And yeah, in this case, it seems that you only care that it has passed. We can work with that, yes.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to say. We need an option of setting some conditions.
Yeah, absolutely.
That will pop up on the next one that we're adding, but on this one also, if it failed, I don't want to see everything in queue. I definitely want to set up the conditions here. Right.
I mean, just an example of additional condition that you don't want now, but theoretically speaking, you could have a stage where you don't want to react on RC versions. So you should be able to also specify a condition that you only want.
Okay, that's my next use case that I want to cover, and that is the non-RC version one that needs to end up in documentation, and that needs to have a slightly different workflow. But let's map for this use case and then go back and map for that one. So, okay, I set up these conditions. I have a trigger. What else did we say that I need to have? There are these stage level secrets. I guess I need that. And I need all of these.
Yes.
It's just that. Okay, and then let's just copy and edit. So I want to approve this. I leave this empty, it's fine, it's just QA environment. So run, I select Semaphore pipeline again. And the workflow builder, I build YAML that connects to Google Cloud. What does it do? It just runs installation. Oh, delete the cluster, creates a new cluster.
I mean, those level detail, that's probably not correct what you want to do. So I will maybe.
Why not?
I mean, you would leave the previous cluster then hanging forever if you're deleting it, or
What do you mean hanging forever? That's what I currently do when I'm testing. I just delete the cluster
yeah.
and it wipes it out completely.
But what do you do in the end of the day? I mean, here you're deleting something. You know that it exists, or my
Oh, I
point is
see.
mainly that maybe too many details, but
The only reason why I'm going through it in detail is it helps me think and also make sure that we don't miss anything.
okay.
That's the only reason. I see your point, but that's a good point. I don't want to leave the cluster hanging. So would I define this as a
I mean,
different stage, or what would I do in that
well,
case?
it's a life cycle management of a resource, which
Mm,
is kind of domain on its own. You know, when does it go up? When does it go down?
yep.
You could have a stage after this one, which is waiting for 3 hours. You know, if you're
Mm.
either red or green, and if like no interaction happens, it's going to automatically delete it after 3 hours.
I mean, technically, well, yeah, right. I need, what do I need? I need to get those login parameters, and I just need to log in and make sure that it works. I don't want to test the instance in detail.
That does not concern us, I think, at this on this
Do,
level.
could I have promotions within the stage?
No.
No. Okay.
I would let's say let's spin it up and let's install it.
Hmm.
And then in the next iteration, we can talk about that life cycle of that environment if you want to manage it here. I mean, the easiest thing on the high level will be creating a new stage
Hmm.
that will be triggered with the timeout. Yeah.
Okay.
But we'll see if that's a good approach or not.
Okay, fine. I map this out this way, and then after we will realize that I'm kind of wasting a resource by not spinning this down. But yeah, okay, runs installation. Now here we said that we want to add it as an optional thing where I export some things to stage artifacts.
I wouldn't call them stage artifacts. I would call them stage outputs. But yeah, you could feed in things into the stage outputs. So it can be, let's say, installation username, installation password, installation URL. Let's say if it changes, probably doesn't, but yeah, just to give some examples.
How do I do that?
I wouldn't dive too deep into how is that going to be implemented. One way is that you have like a CLI within that pipeline that you're running. And once you gather those variables, you call an API endpoint for this particular stage run, and you say attach these data points, which are passed for this username, this URL, this.
So a CLI that calls.
It attaches outputs to this stage run.
Okay, so what's next? After I define this, let's see. I have Define that the input is this version. I'm listening to this event. I guess this event passes this input
Yeah, absolutely. It's
package.
embedded. Yeah, it's embedded.
Embedded there. Um, let's say that I mistyped this. What will happen then? I will start.
It will not work. It will just not work. Because we are receiving the message
Mm-hmm,
and we are expecting the message will have something.
mm-hmm,
We don't know if it has it or not until it arrives,
mm-hmm,
because it's going to be generated in a future point in time,
mm-hmm.
and life cycle of that previous stage is separate. Someone could come in, redefine it from the ground up, and you are still, listening. You're waiting for a mail from someone that no longer exists, or you're waiting for certain data points that are no longer there. So your GK stage would just end up being in some way obsolete and not. It will not be triggered. You will get a message. It will not contain that particular field.
Yeah,
Things are not going to be triggered.
yeah. I wonder if we should be defining the trigger first, and then we can maybe do some validation
No,
on the
it's
input.
impossible because the life cycle of it's impossible in the how we currently imagine things.
Mm-hmm,
That each stage has a life cycle on its own.
mm-hmm,
You're updating them, approving them, putting them in motion like individually. That's the dynamic nature of the canvas as a whole.
mm-hmm.
And in that world, you don't have that tight coupling. You have stages that are listening on various messages, and they are not tightly coupled there.
Mm.
So
But am I?
you cannot get you cannot best of both worlds. You cannot get kind of very dynamic system where each stage has a life cycle on its own, and then also have these like strict naming rules across them, because
Hmm.
you will stiffen the dynamic nature of the canvas. I mean, that's my current understanding of things.
But am I drawing dependencies between them if I'm
No,
setting them up by like this?
no,
No?
no.
Huh.
I mean, you are in a way, but with this trigger,
Yes.
you are saying I'm waiting for all the messages that are coming out of this particular stage.
Yeah, based on the trigger, I have that info. So why wouldn't I draw the dependency?
You can have a drop down where you could select on which stage you want to depend, from which stage they want to consume messages. It seems that would be possible. So you are defining your stage, and you say I'm listening on, and then you have a drop down, and then you can select the stage that you want to listen to.
Yeah, we should have done this. Being detailed is okay. I select stage from some list. I find and select I set in additional form. Set conditions. Yeah, let's finish defining it and then talk about how it's used, because I mean for 3 stages, how would they be represented visually? We defined what to run. Yeah, using Canvas suite. Let's just quickly do this one. I think here it's pretty much the same. And what's different is
Well, secret and the trigger are different.
stage. Secret is well, secret and run are different. And there is that manual approval. Correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. So using this, first thing that I want to have is I want to see visually how they pan out, which means that I definitely want to have
At this point now, it would be possible to have, let's call it, like a zero state or like default representation of the stages that would be connected by lines.
Mm-hmm.
For this, as we spoke about, if we will, when it comes to multiple events and some more complex conditions and so on, there might be some variations so in the connecting them. But for this, what we talked about so far, this what you draw would look pretty much like this.
Yeah, shouldn't be a problem if it's based on triggers, right?
Events from stages.
Yeah, trigger is
But
a
I'm not
stage event.
triggering anyone. When trigger is used when something is sitting there, and I come and I do something with it. So it's like from the someone who is coming first to the someone who is coming second. Hey, I'm triggering you.
Mm-hmm.
It's just like kind of technical terminology. And if I don't know about you, then I'm not triggering you. I'm just emitting events into the air, and whoever is sitting out there can listen on them and pick them up. But I don't know about you. So DO doesn't know about GK. GK doesn't know about EKS. The mapping is going backwards.
Gotcha.
It is let's say fundamental difference to how Semaphore is working today.
Got it. This
It's
is
not changing. It's not changing anything right now. But
it is a bit hard for me to wrap my head around how this will look like visually. I mean, in this case, where we say, "Hey, I have these stages on a canvas,"
mm-hmm.
and they have a clear dependency on each other, which is based on the events that they listen to. This one doesn't exist.
But it's going to look exactly like this in this scenario.
Right. Okay. So we are going to draw some lines that signify this is listening to this.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Right.
It
Okay.
might become impossible at some point through whatever reasons, or might end up being, somewhat dynamic. Multiple things being deployed to multiple, versions, not multiple versions, but multiple things being deployed in a single stage and so on. So I don't know exactly how we will draw that, but
Got it. Okay. So let's run this scenario of we have version. What was the last state here? RC1. We were talking about approvals and execution queue, blah, blah, blah. Doesn't really matter. Let's say that I introduce this when we had this version there. It is official stable. So I want to write Pedro pushes this is the current state. We're literally doing this now. He releases on GitHub. I had to do this manually, but the old stage picks up and deploys new version 2. I test this version for several days. And find few issues. Right. I guess I want to test installation. No, I want to do that as a last step. So I find few issues. Addresses them. It's again deployed to testing passes, no issues found. At this point, I have 2 items in Google Cloud Queue. RC1 and RC2. There is no point in tests.
and even deploying.
Yes. Testing. one. So I approve RC2. I'll give you a plot twist in a second. And reject RC1. RC2 is deployed on but it fails is an issue with installation. I report this, and Pedro asks if we had same issue in RC1. So what if I rejected RC1, but I actually want to figure out I want to deploy it?
I mean, you initially let your terminal rejected it.
Mm-hmm.
So it was, moved from the queue to somewhere else.
Mm-hmm.
You should be able to do the reverse action also. That's my first idea.
Find RC1 and click some restart button. RC1 is deployed. So RC3 triggers DigitalOcean deployment. So this is the state. I go to Google list of rejected items. So let's recap. I have some stable version on GitHub. We release RC1 as we did last week. I have DigitalOcean stage. It deploys new version to DigitalOcean as soon as it's released. So even before Pedro announces the release, I already have that on DigitalOcean instance. I test it. Find issues, log issues. Pedro addresses these issues and releases. It's not deployed. New item appears in, because I need to approve it. Yeah, I need to approve these. So it doesn't happen automatically. I mean, technically, I would want this to happen automatically.
You don't want something to run over the current version while you are testing. You never know who is going to do what.
Right. In our case, that's okay because of just how we are rolling out these RC versions. We're doing things in stages. Once testing is done, only then the RC2 can be released. So in this use case, I would want this to happen automatically. So I already have it in the DigitalOcean, but I don't want it to deploy to Google Kubernetes. Okay. RC2, new item. I approve. Tests, I test, no issues. At this point, I have 2 items in Google Kubernetes Engine cluster. As a stage, I have RC1 and RC2. I approve RC2, reject RC1. This is deployed, it passes. AWS has RC2 in queue, just has one thing in queue and it's triggered. Fails. I report. He asks if we have same issue in RC1. So I need to go back to some list of rejected items in the queue, which is just filtered probably. Find it and click some sort of restart button or add back to queue or whatever. Now this creates a new instance of this. I think it's important to specify that it doesn't just unflag it as rejected, giving you the option to approve it. It creates a new instance of this item or whatever we call it.
I mean, we will want we will want everything to be just immutable. So you're probably right. It's going to copy that message. Going to create a copy. The retired one is going to stay where it is. Rejected one is going to stay where it is.
Yeah.
The new one would be created and copied. It would have a new ID and whatever in the background.
Yes. Yes. Exactly. Exactly. I think it's important to know for functionality scope and for developers to know that this is how it works. So RC1 is deployed to added. This is very clear. Okay. Okay, so we are drawing dependencies. Some important notes. The What else is the new insight? I mean, one thing that I can think about, is here in terms of usability, having to create the AWS stage, which it will be different. I want to create a new stage in this instance because my pipeline will be different. But
you could the one of the struggles that people will generally have to figure out how to handle is that bundling or unbundling, because you can have many stages doing very small steps, or you can have bigger stages which in its pipeline down below are handling a lot of stuff. So you can in one stage deploy to Azure, AWS, GKE, multiple versions of GKE, multiple versions of Semaphore, whatever, have a matrix of complexity. And then you can always decide to put it in that pipeline, which is hidden behind a single, single stage. And it lives somewhere below. Or you can decide to expand it and create it in the canvas, while your pipelines in the background are more simplistic. But I think it's a good thing because it would allow people more freedom depending on the very nature of their process, of their application, of whatever they are doing, to balance that, how much you are pushing, hiding away behind a single button, or how much you're exposing in the canvas. If those data points are crucial for the team communication, then I think that it should be expanded in the canvas, because when people open the canvas, they should, easily see what's happening. But depends on the size of the team also, and how focused is a canvas.
right. Right. I mean, for me, there is, regarding what you're saying, is if we add a second layer of complexity to this particular use case, like what you noted when we were defining these Google stages, but you will have this instance up and running for no reason after it's done. Okay, now I want to add something that will shut it off after. You said 3 hours, right? But I don't want to have. So let's say that it's like this, right? Now it's clear how we're defining stages, so no need to write that down unless something new pops up. But let's say that it's like this, and I have and this doesn't really take. Does it take any inputs? I mean, all this does is shut down. Deletes.
There is always an input. Everything is triggered by an event, so it must listen to some event. And from that event, yes, I guess it can choose not to take anything. Which in this case could, this is maybe a unique situation where that would be the case, because here you might not even care if it passed or failed. Because if you care if it passed or failed, then you must take that as an input. But in this stage, if you literally don't even care if it passed or failed, that just it happened, then yeah. I mean,
what do you mean that it happened?
Enters the queue, you process it 3 hours later. What do you want to add?
I was confused about I don't care about whether it passed, I just care if it happened, but I realize now that I I only care if the delete the cluster command triggered, and that's it. And not if the actual if the cluster was actually deleted. So that's clear. Okay, but here, I mean, what input do I have?
I mean, theoretically, that let's say when you provision a new cluster in that first block in the middle, that cluster gets an ID, a new cluster, some Google ID of the cluster, and you might want to feed that as an output, just that ID, PQ75,
Right.
and then the delete one is going to take that PQ and execute delete command on it.
It's actually cluster name, but that cluster name can change in installation.
I mean, I guess it can be done both. It can be done both ways. You can have some things that are static, or you want them dynamic. But let's say, yeah.
The question here is, do I have stages without any inputs? Which in this case, I have a stage that doesn't really rely on any inputs. I just need it to start
But
based on
it
event.
receives the message. It receives the message, from that stage. And then it's like, I know in my mind, just like a technical detail, will I take some data point out of that message and do something with it? Or I'm just going to consume the message. Okay, message arrived. That means the previous stage is finished. So maybe that is the input that you are working on, because we could be also emitting messages when the previous stage has started, and when it finished. Then you might want to always, or maybe the default would be, okay, I'm only consuming message when something is finished, because the idea currently is that each stage is emitting a message when it started and when it finished, because you might want to model some workflow where when someone starts, I also want to do something.
That's right. There's also this case where this stage has multiple outputs, but not all outputs are consumed by the other stages. So in this
that would be
case,
the default.
I have this output which I want AWS to consume, and I want to track which version AWS has. But in this case, I don't want this stage to consume this.
You don't care. You just want
output.
to kill it.
Yes. So this doesn't really have. I'm not defining any inputs. So inputs are optional, really.
I think so. We will see as we develop this, but at this point in time, it seems so.
Good. So it's not required. They are optional. I can have a stage without any inputs.
Yeah, seems so.
Okay. And I need to define somewhere that it waits for 3 hours. Let's add that. Actually. I realize that I'm wasting resources by leaving I want to have a time trigger. Have a stage that deletes secrets triggered by where do I define this?
Waiting. Not GK, not GK stage passing, GK stage finishing. Pass means that it's green.
Yeah. So when do I define these 3 hours?
I think, I mean, as we spoke about it, it should be in the conditions, but it's not 100% clear to me at this point.
It has to be triggered by.
I mean, to be for that 3 hours to be calculated, you do need input, and the input is when something jumped into the queue, when something was inserted into the queue. Or when what is the timestamp on the message that arrived. You need to start calculating from something.
Right.
And to take it, and to have that, you need to take it in some way. But I don't know now if that would be explicit inputs that would be defined, or it's something that you just have because it's event dot happen that 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 the system will start calculating from. I would say somewhat broadly it is defined in a condition, and we don't know exactly yet now how we are going to tie conditions to queue or tie conditions to that thing that lives between the queue and the stage, which is taking stuff from the queue and executing something on them.
But this sounds like important thing to define now, or we can move on and do something else.
I don't think it's possible to define now. I don't think we are, that. I mean, it will have to be a little bit back and forth between, engineering and what's possible there and what makes sense and what will be clear for the user.
Gotcha.
How the DSL will look, how the UI will look. So it will be something in between.
Okay, so I can map it as an unknown. There is one question that I have though is, so let's say that I have this defined and RC1 is deployed to DigitalOcean and I test it within 1 hour, right? And then it goes to Google, it gets deployed there. And between 1 hour, another one arrives on Google. That's RC2. And within 1 hour, RC3 arrives, right? So I have 3 items in queue and the 3-hour timer. Are they going to be?
Well, the question is, are you creating a new version for each of those?
Yeah,
new
each of those got deployed
to the same cluster,
to the
or
same cluster because I have delete cluster, create new cluster, install Semaphore in my GKE.
well, the previous message, if you deleted it,
Mm-hmm.
then the previous message, once it reaches that 3 hour timeout in that
Mm-hmm.
delete stage, is just going to say, oh, this cluster no longer exists, nothing for me to do.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's why you should be probably passing along the ID of a cluster from Google and not just some name which is static. You know, we should not be passing my cluster to the delete stage. We should be passing the ID of a cluster that might have disappeared in the meantime for whatever reason.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Or do I want some strategy where I only run the last item in queue? I see use cases. I mean, in this case,
You
what
can
you're
do like
saying
the
makes sense.
auto cancellation. So if
Yes.
something new arrives, the previous item that have not been started but are queued are going to be rejected. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, in this case, it's better to do what you described because that way I'm making sure that there's no way that I will miss
Yeah.
a cluster. But there are definitely cases where I want to
Yeah, I
define.
think that strategy will sooner or later become attractive for people.
Yeah. Should be an op to define the Yeah, I'm trying to speed it up since we're running out of time a bit. So, okay, I have this in that case. RC1, RC2, RC3, they're all deployed here. And after 3 hours, based on the cluster input
Mm-hmm.
that this stage emits, they are deleted. Now, this stage emits two things. It emits this version, and it also emits the cluster ID, but this consumes only the version, and this consumes
It's
only
in
the
the same
cluster.
message. It's in the same message.
Yes.
Both of them just consume same message. They just care about the different parts of the message.
Mm. The reason why I'm asking is, let's say that I also have this. I mean, this will probably be drawn something like this, but okay. I don't know, some ID.
Yeah.
And I don't know if I don't have anything for DigitalOcean, right? Yeah.
I mean, you don't have instance. You don't have your instance there. So that again, it has the life cycle. Unless you're keeping it up all the time, then you are potentially spinning a new one for each new version that you're deploying, and you want to be cleaning them up, as they're coming up.
Mm-hmm. And these are separate. Let's say 3 days.
Yeah.
Okay, and this has
Yeah.
so technically this
We don't have
also
input.
has this.
Yes, yes. It's probably nested in some, message in the previous stage name as like a namespace. But yes.
Is it nested? Is it also the Semaphore version that's nested?
We will see. Maybe it is, but it's the this will be back and forth with Lucas and Damian regarding the message spec. But I'm pretty sure that it will be in some way nested, because it should be clear where it's coming from. You must know that. You want to, in that GKE part, you want to know where is that instance ID coming from. You don't care about it, but I think that the nesting is a must. Because eventually people would have, some would come and would have dozens of like inputs and outputs, and they would want to control them, and nesting then would be a best name to know. It's like expanding objects.
Exactly. My point here is that.
But you don't want to represent them in the UI here. I mean, there will be probably like a way to choose what is represented in the UI. So this is not a UI. This is like a logical representation for us now to track things. But yeah, I mean, cluster ID is not something that you want to represent as a.
Right. All I want to represent here is that's my point. We have all of these inputs and outputs. As this gets propagated through this event-based pipeline, more of them pop up for these stages, right? And if each event contains all of the outputs, right? Because it has to. I cannot really know that. Hey, all this thing cares about is this Semaphore version, but this thing cares about only this, and it doesn't care about the rest. I get all of them, but what I do with them is a different thing. So I don't consume them all.
Correct.
But we talked about that table-like view, and I need a way to.
Play with.
Yeah, maybe we can stop here, and then that could be the next thing, because we should define on how we intend this to work.
Yeah.
And how.
I mean, that table can be one first next step. There is also a possibility that we dive into creating the UI for this what we have so far. Because yes, that UI will not cover absolutely all the edge cases, but it has, I think, all the main components, all the critical components, and we could create it, in the mockup stage, because and also see the details of representation and details of creation.
Right. Sure. I think that's good. As we define things, new things pop up, and you have to go and edit those. If I read this one now, there are things here that are not accurate after this session, right? So I, for example, had to go back and change that inputs are not required. They're optional, because you can have a stage that doesn't really consume any
Yeah,
inputs.
and we will see about those because you will you'll be writing down conditions.
And
Right? If condition is working with something, then it's a must input,
yes.
And then there is even a question: should I be defining inputs?
Yes. Yeah. There.
Implicitly defined through crafting a condition.
That's right. We added conditions here. That's another thing within the triggers. So things pop up, and then you have to go and update the UI. And the only question is, are we in okay enough state that we know that we won't have to completely revamp it?
I think we are. I think that the main building blocks will not fundamentally change. Like the creation of the stage and the elements that stage has, but devil is in the details, so details will change a lot probably for a long time.
Okay. There is, so just to mention a few things that are kind of open questions for the next session. For me, they will pop up as we start working on it. I don't want to write them down, but there is that inputs thing and the table and how to represent what. It's actually shouldn't be that complicated now that I think about it. You're just showing the inputs that the stage consumes, and that's the ones that we're building the table based on, maybe. Okay, so there's that inputs thing, but there is also so now I have two stages for each environment. The one that deploys and the one that deletes it. It's not that hard to imagine that I will have 5 stages for each environment, it's actually.
What do you mean environment?
DigitalOcean.
Oh, okay. What would be example of 5 stages?
Oh, I don't know. There's some CI that I want to run.
Spin it down in one stage, then deploy it in another, then clean up in the third.
Yes. Yeah.
The sooner we have something to play with, it would be faster to experiment with these with a prototype than drawing and writing down in Whimsical.
Good.
That's why we want, probably the UI and also the first implementation, because it just playing with it will be faster than drawing it here.
Yeah, my point is that functionality wise, at the zoomed out view, we can draw it, of course, but functionality wise, we actually talked about this. There will have to be some grouping, and then the question is, do I have multiple levels in that grouping or just 2? I don't see how we could do it with multiple levels, but there's that. And there is also this use case of, okay, now I have this pipeline that helps me with this QA thing that I'm doing. And we don't have this yet, but we will in near future. Let's say that we're doing dog fooding of this community edition by running some of our projects on this instance. So now I have this.
That's not clear. It would be an environment, like an instance of the app, which.
Yes. Yeah. So I need a new stage there, but I only want to deploy stable versions there.
Yeah.
So I want it to skip the RC versions, but I want to deploy the stable versions there. And I also, when I deploy stable version, I want to have a stage that updates the docs. So
yeah,
we can maybe start mapping.
Damian wrote it down in the spec. I mean, that would be possible because there are those string manipulations and conditions where you would want to pretty much verify, is the RC present in the version name or not, or is it like major, minor, whatever. I mean, just mentioning that it would be possible to do such things with conditions.
Nice. Okay, then we could try and visually map that out as we play with UI. It's a super simple use case, but it should give us this perspective of two different environment types, right? And two
Right.
workflows happening on the same canvas, where you have one workflow that's running constantly, and that is the QA workflow and RC. And then you have the stable version workflow
Yeah.
that's, sorry, the RC workflow is happening on less stages than the stable version workflow is
Yeah.
happening on. And then I need to be able to select, okay, I want to see, RC2, and then just see that it was deployed to these environments and not
Yeah.
this other, and how that will be displayed. Okay, let's do that. We're working on UI then.
Yeah.
Next time,
I would
just
try it. I would try it, yes, and
re
see how it goes.
really simple wireframe for creating stages, which maybe I can try and get some head start on. We'll see how the day goes, but we can do that, and mainly focus on that read
Yeah.
UI, as in the actual canvas
Yeah. Sounds good.
UI. Cool.
Okay, let's end it here.
All right.
See you around.